The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Wrestling with Johners Live, episode 295. And I've got an awesome guest for a Thursday evening. One of the most informed pro wrestlers on the UK scene in 2023. He's none other than the TNT Ignition champion, and more recently, and we're going to get into this, the Odyssey Pro Heavyweight champion, the natural born fighter RPD. Ryan, how are you doing? And thank you so much for coming on the show. How you doing, my friend?
Good, thank you, mate. Thank you for having me on.
You're very, very welcome. And like I said to you off air, you've been on my list of guests to reach out to for a long time now. And to be honest with you, it couldn't be any more relevant, especially after what happened at the weekend. But before we get started, just a quick message to my live audience at home. And if you want to get in touch, you can do. If you want to send RPD any questions or any comments for the show, please go ahead. Just send them through to us using your chosen device. They'll ping through to us and we'll bring them up on screen at the relevant time, hopefully during the course of this interview. Recent interviews, recent guests that I've had on in the month of April alone. We've got Ace Matthews that came on the show last week, I believe, just 7 days ago, doing some great things up north with True Grit, with Tidal Championship Wrestling and 1PW. So that's a really fun interview with Ace Matthews. Just 2 days ago, it's been a busy week for John's, but just 2 days ago, I had Niwa on the show, doing amazing things in the south and the southwest of the UK, especially for All Star, Southwest Wrestling, and various other promotions. But we had a great conversation with Niwa live from the All Star Wrestling South Training Academy, and Joel Redman even paid us a little cameo there during a training session. But also to let you know that we're getting ever closer to episode 300. And 2 days ago, during my Niwa interview, I announced that my guest for episode 300 is going to be none other than Nina Samuels. Nina Samuels will be gracing us with her presence May the 15th. So a little over, nearly 3 weeks away, less than 3 weeks away, but we'll have Nina Samuels on the Wrestling with John's podcast for episode 300. But today I've got this man here for episode 295, and I'm going to bring up a picture before we start chatting. Look at that there. RP Davies with all the gold, and hot off of a very exciting weekend for you for Odyssey Pro, where you became their heavyweight champion, and beautiful bout. Looks even better over your shoulder, RPD, but a hell of a weekend for you. If you had to sum up, I think it was Saturday, wasn't it, in Morecambe? If you had to sum up that kind of whole occasion, and have you had a chance for it to set in yet? And have you had a chance to sit back and reflect on what an awesome day that was?
Not really, no. Special. That's the only word. To sum it up, it was special. It was a really special night for my career. It was a special night, I think, for Odyssey as a company. And it was just something that I'm just so incredibly proud of, and not just of me, of everybody involved that kind of made that happen over the past 2 years. That's like everything we've been working towards, and it all kind of paid off on this sort of perfect, I don't want, perfect's a strong word, but it really was like a kind of a perfect moment where it all worked out how we hoped it would. So yeah, just really, really proud.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk a bit about the match itself in a moment, but you mentioned that it's been nearly a 2-year-long journey with yourself and with Odyssey Pro. You've been there from day one. You've been there from show one, featured in every single show. And your journey with Odyssey Pro has been an interesting one, to say the least. Lots of obstacles and hurdles for yourself to eventually get to that championship match. But tell us about, from a personal perspective, your journey with the company, and let's say some of the challenges along the way that eventually got you to that championship match.
Yeah, well, the way I came to Odyssey, we were in the middle of the COVID lockdown. Do you remember them?
Yes.
I've
tried to forget it.
I mean, certainly a weird time in history. And my wrestling career, as well as nearly everybody's wrestling career, had been put to a grinding halt. And I took part in something called the 36-week physique while I was doing it to try and get in better shape and at least do something productive towards wrestling while we were under these sort of, lockdowns. Now, while I was in this was run by a former wrestler called Nush, trained with Nush, and he's a great guy. And he set this up, this 36-week physique, and I knew a lot of the British wrestlers were involved. So you had guys like Big Guns Joe in there, and Ethan Allen, and guys like that. And I joined it, and I met somebody called Rick Marcus, literally like this. Online, because everything was done via Zoom calls and whatnot, and we just hit it off. And we ended up talking quite a bit, and obviously going back and forward over the training that we were doing at home, like home workouts and stuff. And he was just somebody within the wrestling business that I just clicked with straight away. He was just a good guy, and he was like me. He was a similar age to me, and I think he had the same sort of same sort of ideas in regards to what I think wrestling is. He was very similar to me, and he had worked in Morecambe for many years leading into that, and I never had. And he talked to me. He said, "Why don't you? Would you be interested in wrestling over in Morecambe? For Odyssey when we return?" And I was very flattered, because up until that point, I'd only had like a year in wrestling. And that was for Grand Pro Wrestling, the company that I started with in Wigan, and that obviously has a massive place in my heart as well. But for some other company to come along and say, we'd like to try it out and see if you like, I was dead excited. And so lockdown's finished, I got myself in shape, and then I debuted for Odyssey on its first show, which was called Set Sail. And I've never looked back. Like, that crowd, I can't tell you what Morecambe fans are like. I really can't. It's hard to explain. Really, really hard to explain. I've wrestled and I've fought all over the country in various venues, but Morecambe is something else. It's something else.
Yeah, and they've really taken you to their hearts, because I've seen a fair bit of Odyssey footage and a fair bit of footage of yourself in your various matches for Odyssey, and they're always loud, enthusiastic, on their feet. It's a proper family audience, but they love RPD over at Odyssey Pro. You are kind of like their Hulk Hogan. You are their babyface to cheer for. But that must be good for you. That must be, let's say, when you need that extra 10%, they're always behind you, aren't they?
100%. The reason I say this, right, to be honest, across every promotion I work for, I'm very lucky. The crowds I've been lucky enough for them to always be behind me. And I'll be honest with you, without them, I wouldn't have got anywhere near where I have got. So it's completely down to the fan bases that support these promotions, and the way they react to me, that I'm sure is the reason that, well, for one, I keep getting booked, and for two, they push me up the card for it, But Morecambe particularly, I debuted for them. They didn't know, they never knew anything of me. But from the second I walked out through the curtain, they just, I don't know, they just took to me, and it's just built from there. It really has just built, and I think I've become kind of their boy, and I'm so proud of. I'm so proud of that, because every time I go out, they're so loud, and if that doesn't set a fire under you to perform better and try as hard as you can when you're out there, then I don't know what could.
Absolutely. And before we talk about the match from Saturday against now former champion Ryan Hunter, I want to talk about the kind of video package that accompanied it, the hype video. I know that we're going to talk about your boxing background because that's a very important part of your career, very important part of your life. But it was almost like a Rocky training montage with yourself and Sam Gradwell and highlights of your journey through Odyssey. You was in the gym there. There was the medicine ball being thrown against your stomach, really testing your stomach muscles there. But that looked like a lot of fun. But as a package, as a hype video, that pulled me in, that got me invested. But such a fantastic bit of content there.
Yeah, well, first of all, it was done by an exceptionally talented man in the editor, who does a lot of the packages.
100%.
A lot of the video packages in the Northwest and probably further afield, as far as I know. But he also does a lot of the filming of shows that I perform on. I've grown to become great friends with Ant for the last 4 years, and just genuinely lovely man. That's the only way I could say it, really. But he's so. I think that video, he's done so many things that make him stand out. But that video, in particular, I think really showed what he can do as well. Because it didn't take us long to put that together at all. He came down, we filmed for a few hours, and we had an idea of what we wanted. And what you said there, Rocky montages were discussed. That was something that I grew up. I loved them films when I was a kid, and I said to Anne, there's nothing that got me more kind of hyped up than a Rocky montage before his big fight. I said, so that was a lot of the basis behind the idea of the promo. But as I say, I can't take a lot of credit for it because Ant just made us all look like absolute superstars. And then I got, as I say, my friend Sam Gradwell and Chris, my other friend, he came down and they helped me out as well. And I was just dead proud of it. I thought it looked really, really high standard, and it did its job in selling that match and making, if people weren't sure about going, they certainly were after watching that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I only wish I lived closer because after seeing that, I would have easily have been there on the day. But let's talk about the match then. And I've got a few pictures to bring up on screen. Obviously, there was the former champion there, Ryan Hunter. And like I say, that the crowd were red hot. The action was amazing. The drama, the story that you guys told on the day, like I say, the build up to the match as well, with the various attacks and challenges that you had from Ryan Hunter, Reese and Rogan, Andre Decker, and but I mean, even the referee getting involved there, Reese and Rogan coming down. And who's the gentleman in the glasses and the hats? That is Chris Brooker. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
their manager.
This is all part of the kind of the ongoing story that's been going on for certainly over a year. It's been actually been going on for 2 years. Got all the different pieces anyway. This is kind of, I said this before, this is a story of which the sum of all of its parts. It isn't just me. It is every single person who has been part of it that's kind of made this massive snowball that's rolling down a hill and just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the crowd has just got more invested and more invested as we've gone on. But last year, War on the Shore, which was the year before, I was wrestling in the main event there for the title against Ryan Hunter, and I was wrestling against Andre Decker. And at the time, Ryan Hunter was the babyface in Morecambe. I was on the way up, and people had got behind me, but Ryan Hunter had been the babyface there for, I don't know, 5-6 years, and he was absolutely beloved. He really was the Cena of Morecambe. And that's where this story really set off. We quite quickly got rid of Andre Decker, and then me and Ryan went at it a little bit. And it would seem I was getting the better of it. And at that point, Chris Brooker came out with Reese and Rogan, who I know very well. I know how dangerous they are. And I thought Ryan was going to back me up and we were going to get rid of them and then carry on with the match. But he turned on me, he hit me with a chair and won the title that night and aligned with the spotlight and Chris Brooker. And that's basically the story that's been going on from that moment on. They've taken over Odyssey Pro Wrestling ever since that day. And I, for our next show, that I would one by one pick them off because they picked the wrong guy. They picked the wrong guy to have the fun with, and that's what I've done. So for the last year, every show, one by one, I've ticked one off. I've ticked one off. I've ticked one off until eventually I got to the Rumble, just gone in February, and I ended up winning the Rumble and becoming number one contender. And I claimed my shot then, and chose that this was the time to finally, get my revenge and get Ryan on for what he did to me a year ago.
You certainly did. I'm just gonna flash up a few of them last slides. There you are, and with the Superman punch. Do you have a particular name for that move? The one you put your opponents away with?
I call it the lights out. I call it the lights. The reason I call it the lights out is because my favourite boxer of all time was called James Toney. I think it was James Lights Out Toney. So that's a little inside thing.
There you go, and there you are. Referee LK holding up your hands, championship held aloft, and the new Odyssey Pro champion. Like you say, a culmination of a fantastic storyline, really, really well kind of played out by all of the moving parts, all of the participants, and Saturday couldn't have gone any better. You described it earlier as perfect, and it pretty much was perfect for sure. So, I mean, how does it feel? I mean, you've been part of Odyssey Pro for nearly 2 years now, been on every single show, part of that amazing storyline, winning the championship. That must be pretty special for you. I mean, as a performer, as a competitor, how does that make you feel?
I'm so proud. I'm so proud of it. I'm proud of the whole thing. Odyssey has become very, very special to me. And I make I've never I make it quite apparent that that's the case as well. Them fans genuinely do mean a lot to me. They've become friends of mine, and the people backstage at Odyssey are they're just the best, and they've been great with me. They've been great with me, and they've had faith in me, and it's been my job for the last 2 years to repay that faith, and that's what I've tried to do on every single show. And the show that we've just had, War on the Shore, me winning that title was kind of the culmination of everything that we've built. And like I say, it's very hard to put into words apart from just the sort of pride that I have in being. And I'm so proud to be able to say I'm the Odyssey Pro Wrestling Champion because I love that company. I love what they stand for. I love the things that they do. And I just want to be a part of it. And I want to kind of push them on and make them as big a company as we could, as a team, possibly make.
Well, absolutely. And like I say, we've had the storyline of you chasing for the title, overcoming the spotlight. And their next show is this one here, Mutiny, the 3rd of June. So I don't know if anything's been announced yet or if anything can be announced. But like I say, I'm guessing you're going to be there. You're certainly on the poster and hopefully, possibly defending your title for the first time. But any thoughts on what we might see from RPD on June the 3rd?
Good one. Listen. This is the start of the reign now. So yes. Although the chapter's ended, the story has ended, and I'm very, very, like I say, very proud to close that chapter now. It's fantastic, but now we've got to keep rolling, and we've got to come up with as good as an interesting and as exciting story going forward as we've had in the past, because we can't just stay there forever now. So my job now is to become, and this is what my aim is, to become the champion that them people deserve. They've had that's been against them for since its inception, since that title got introduced. That champion has kind of turn on the fans and not give them, in my opinion, what they wanted, and that's my job now to be that guy, be their guy, and fight for them and fight all comers, and that's what I'm going to do.
Absolutely. And tell us about this match here. I think this happened, what was it, maybe November 2021, a tables, ladders and chairs match. And there you are alongside Rick Marcus, born ready against Synergy and Reese and Rogan in a triple threat tables, ladders and chairs match. Now, I'm pretty sure that I spoke to Ethan Edwards when he came on the show, and I think we mentioned this match in particular. And I think he described it as one of the craziest but most excellent matches he's ever seen, and you were a part of that. What was it like to be a part of that TLC match against those two teams?
That was one of the maddest experiences of my life. That match, as you can see on that pitch you just seen then, that I had hair, so I think my hair fell out of that match. It basically, again, to give Odyssey the props, that was a special show. That was in my hometown of Blackpool, and ran that whole show to raise funds for family in Blackpool. A friend of a young boy who sadly had lost his life, and Odyssey did everything they could to do something to help that family as best as they could. And we did, and we raised a lot of money. I can't remember the exact figure, but it was thousands. But for this family, which meant a lot to me because of the personal friends. But I just thought it was such class from the company, certainly a company that had only been around as long as they had been, to come into another town and do that for them. This is where my loyalty to them kind of comes from. That I've seen what they are, and I believe they deserve my loyalty and they deserve my effort from them now because of what they've done. So we put on this phenomenal show in Blackpool. Great card from top to bottom. Everyone was brilliant on it. But then the main event was me and my tag team partner Rick Marcus versus two of the best teams, not in the Northwest, I'd say in the country, possibly the world. They are excellent in Reese and Rogan and Synergy. And we had the TLC match, which again was a bit of a childhood, certainly a childhood box ticker for me. That one,
Yeah.
Watching Edge of Christian and Dudley Boys and Jeff Hardy and whatnot, and the opportunity to do that myself was phenomenal. So yeah, we did it in Blackpool. We had a riot. I wouldn't suggest doing it again.
You've ticked that box. You've done that. Yeah, we'll leave that there.
Oh, that's my door. Got a little girl as well.
Right.
Goes on busy, but she's banging on the window. But anyway, so we had this match, and it was insane, and again, it was one of those nights that went perfectly. I seem to have a lot of them at Odyssey, but it was one of the nights that went perfectly. We got the young boy who I'm talking about, Jordan, who the night was dedicated to. We got his whole football team there, and they sat in the front row, and they cheered and they clapped and they had a good night, and just all six of us. I think we were very proud. We were very proud of what we were able to achieve there. And it was certainly one of the funniest matches I've ever been in as well. Top it off, so that was a bonus.
Yeah. A question that I have for you regarding your training, your development over the last few years, certainly maybe coming out of lockdown and but obviously we're going to talk about your boxing background fairly soon, your successful boxing background. But when you started as a pro wrestler, obviously you were probably more of a boxer than you were a pro wrestler, and obviously your wrestling training and your development as a pro wrestler came on to the point where you felt comfortable as a pro wrestler. But you still have elements of your boxing background as part of your performance, as part of your move set, and as part of your character, and that's very important to you, isn't it?
100%. And although I do consider myself a professional wrestler now, I've been at this for nearly 5 years. and I love it. I love it with my whole heart. It's been great to me as well. The business has been great to me. But that being said, I would be doing myself a disservice by just kind of switching off the major part in my life that came before wrestling, and that was boxing. Because that's who I am, and I was always told that I should bring, massive parts of myself into pro wrestling. And in my opinion, that's what makes me stand out. And that's what makes me a different act than, nearly anyone I've ever seen. Certainly on the scene that I'm in. No one. There are better technical wrestlers. There are better flyers. There are better all rounders in nearly everything. But there isn't anyone that does what I do to my level. I don't think, and that's not an arrogant thing. It's just I think I'm the only one of my type who wrestles in my style.
Yeah, and do you think having that boxing background has given you some advantages in your wrestling training? And say since becoming an established pro, I've been to many seminars where I've seen, the veteran giving the seminar talking about footwork and how good your footwork needs to be as a pro wrestler, and footwork in boxing is fundamental as well, isn't it? But what's kind of the fundamental carryovers, and has boxing given you any advantages?
Yeah, I believe it has. It's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword because my aim with wrestling is the natural born fighter, and there is a lot of truth within that sort of monkey. That there is a truth in that, and that is, although I was a boxer, I've always been, I've always took to fighting of any form, and it's just something I've always enjoyed. It's something I've always been interested in, and when I turned into a pro wrestler, when I went over to pro wrestling, obviously my instincts of a boxer, my training regimen leading up to that point, my fitness levels, my athleticism, things like that came from boxing, and I certainly think that has helped me adapt, because that is what I think. That is what I think I'm good at. I'm very adaptable, and so even though it was new to me with pro wrestling, you don't have to tell me a couple of times, and I'm on with it, and I'll work on it, and I'm a hard worker, and I'm someone who I understand. I understand how tough a business pro wrestling is. I respect it, and I genuinely do. Like I know how dangerous this sport can be, and because of that, I take it so seriously. I really do, and I've dedicated myself to it just as much as I did the 10 years, 15 years of boxing I did before it. But I've just kind of took that same sort of mindset that I had for boxing and fighting to pro wrestling, and I think it's done well. I've been very lucky because I've got to train with some of the best trainers in the world, and that is even an exaggeration. I started training with Johnny Brannigan, who ran Grand Pro Wrestling. He was the first person to ever lock up with me and show me pro wrestling. And although I've been a fan my whole life, it's very different when you start doing it yourself. And Johnny was the first person to show me anything really, and I owe wrestling to Johnny really. I had that wouldn't have come into my life without him. I wasn't looking for wrestling. He kind of found me, and I'm so glad it did. So it started with Johnny. Johnny did me wonders to start off with, and he got me going in Grand Pro Wrestling. From there, I started training in other places, especially after lockdown, because lockdown finished, and I knew that I'd had another nearly 2 years off there after getting started, and I'd need to really, adapt and get better. I wanted to stay on shows, and I wanted to stay in pro wrestling. I'd need to be better, and the boxing gimmick couldn't last forever. I couldn't just get by on just being a former boxer. I'd have to also be able to prove myself to wrestlers that are you know, putting their bodies on the line with me, but also prove it to the fans as well, you know. And so that's what I've gone about doing, and
Yeah.
trained all over the place. I've trained with John Kenny, who was famous on World of Sport and whatnot. Fantastic guy, showed me loads of stuff. I went over to the Future Shock PC, and I've trained for quite a long period of time with Sam Bailey, who is someone who I really respect, and I think he's a phenomenal talent in his own right, but I think he's a phenomenal trainer, and he has helped me so much and kind of brought me on as well. And then I've been lucky enough to be trained by you know, I've been to seminars and stuff, and met people, but I actually had a full on training session with William Regal in my own gym. So yeah, that was certainly different.
Yeah, a wonderful experience, and I was just really intrigued by kind of like the crossover, and like I say, now that you know what you're doing in the ring, now that you're an experienced pro and established, and certainly winning championships, kind of you're obviously more pro wrestler than boxer, but kind of what elements have stayed with you. But you answered that perfectly, and I want to talk now about another promotion that's very close to your heart, and that's TNT, or TNT Ignition. You are the TNT Ignition champion. Well, when did you first win the championship? Give us the kind of the circumstances under which you won the title in the first place, then, RPD.
Well, again, TNT is a company that I'm honoured to work for. You know, Jay Apter is become a good friend of mine, of me, and he runs that company. And when I started wrestling, I knew about TNT. They're a big company, and when lockdown finished, the first show that I went to watch was a TNT show, ironically, and I was sat in the crowd watching, just planning my return to wrestling. And I remember sitting there and I watched, and I thought, God, I'd love to perform for these. And this was like, you know, 2 years ago, exactly, yeah. Really. So weird. And I was sat and I thought, I'd love to wrestle for these. And then within a couple of months, I'd started working for the shows locally, and I got an opportunity to wrestle for Superstar Wrestling, which is again ran by Jay. And obviously he liked what he saw. And then I got offered, would I like to come in last minute as a replacement on the Ignition brand for a match with Simon Miller, Synergy, Shreddy, and Brian Aidenson in like a 6-man tag, and I snapped his hand off, and again that was a massive moment for me, because it was a big company that I knew a lot about, that you know, I just felt really real great that they even knew of me or wanted to know of me, wanted me on the show. But I came out that night in Liverpool, and the crowd went berserk, and they're chanting. And I've got a video, I think, on my Instagram somewhere, and it's generally one of the most proudest things I heard, because I didn't even know if they'd know me when I walked out. But I walked out, and they just started this RPD chant, and it went off. And yeah, it's just, again, never looked back from that day, really. Like, it surprised me, and I've just tried my very best to be everything to fans that I can be, and that again was a hill climbing exercise. But eventually, at the end of last year, I wrestled Shreddy, who was the then TNT Ignition champion, and I beat him and won in front of all the TNT fans. And again, certainly one of the most proudest moments of my career.
Absolutely, and we'll get into more of your title defences very soon. But for my money, I think probably your biggest rival, your biggest storyline or opponent in TNT Ignition has been Soner Dursun, and you've had a number of matches with him. And I've got a bit of a list here, because, like I say, it certainly warrants revisiting. Cold Day in Hell in November 2021, I think, was your first encounter with Soner. And then the Ignition Rumble the following January. And then you had a boxing match with Soner as well in February. And then in March, you had the Liverpool Fleet fight against Soner, which was a little bit of a payoff to your feud. But, you know, some pictures from the street fight here, the trash can to the head, and then a phenomenal dive from yourself off the stage, which I would love to have seen in the flesh. And then, of course, the aftermath and a bit of a bloody RPD, but a successful RPD and hell of an opponent, Soner Dursun. I've seen him wrestle a few times, and like I say, I think he's also a former Ignition champion. But you two had a pretty intense rivalry over that 4 or 5 month period, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. And Soner is genuinely one of the best talents in the country. Right? And we got into a feud at TNT. And I'll be honest with you, I believe that is what kind of set my stall. One, to TNT management, that I could be the guy. I could be the guy for them. I think what we did in that feud kind of showed that I could hang at that level and win at that level. But also, I think it was the fans. I think that's where I earned the TNT fans respect, which is massive in wrestling, because if they don't believe in you, then it's never going to go for you the way you want it to. But I think Soner is instrumental to me in my time at TNT, for just helping me develop as a wrestler, develop in every way, really, character-wise, everything. Because, like you say, the variety that we did there, we had wrestling matches, we had street fights, we had boxing matches.
Yeah.
It was a sort of example of way of kind of shining a spotlight on me a little bit, and letting these fans kind of get to know me and the skill set that I bring. And yeah, I'm proud of all the matches. I'm really proud of the street fight. The street fight was crazy, and yeah, I got busted up quite bad in that, and but we come away with a win. But I'm very proud of the boxing match.
Well, tell us about it, because putting the gloves back on, being inside a ring with boxing gloves back on, that must have been, a mix of emotions for you.
Yeah, well, unbelievable, because we thought I'd never put boxing gloves on again. I thought my time as a boxer was over. He challenged the boxing match, and I accepted. We had a boxing match, and again, I can only give credit because he's a tough cookie, a really tough cookie, and he, to be honest, really good. He was a really good boxer. He was a lot better than I anticipated myself. But I think what we both achieved that night was something that would have been very hard to do off any talent in this country. To do it to the standard we did it at, and keep a wrestling fan base invested like we did for the full 3 rounds, the way we did as well. I'm incredibly proud of that. But that again, that goes as much for how good Soner Dursun is and his ability to kind of keep a story and keep people invested as it does me. So yeah, just double proud of that feud, and I thank Jay Apter for kind of again giving me the faith to try these different things out that obviously stand out on a card, but that also gives me the opportunity to stand out on a card. So yeah. Just very thankful.
Yeah, we mentioned this individual a bit earlier on in that Rocky-style training montage, but you've defended your TNT Ignition Championship against Sam Gradwell, a good friend of yours. But I don't know if you've had an opportunity to face Sam either before or after this match, so this might be quite a kind of a unique match for you. But getting to defend your title in the TNT Ignition ring against somebody you probably count as one of your very best friends, that must have been another highlight for you.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I've known Sam. I know Sam before I had my very first match. This is again a little bit of a history. As I was training for my DPW, Sam used to come with Johnny and help me out, and he was instrumental into my training again. So I've always been very lucky because I've had extremely talented people. World class. As Sam's proven, he's a world class. He's not a good British wrestler. He's a world class wrestler.
100%.
And he's a star, and he is. He's worked for the WWE and smashing it everywhere he goes. He Pakistan not long ago, and I think there was 10,000 fans there, and that's insane. But I'm very, very proud of Sam. He's you know, he deserves the success he gets, but he's always been very helpful to me. And the opportunity when I won the title for him to come over to TNT and me wrestle him was a bit of a dream, because obviously, you know, I am his friend, but as a wrestling fan, I'm a fan of Sam Gradwell, so I would have loved to. I wanted to test myself against someone that I knew was that level, and yeah, not to be. And I think we put a really good match on. I love that match. I love that match. You know, and again, I think what that did was kind of solidify me as the champion at Ignition as well, because by beating a guy like that, that really puts you on the map, I think, with them fans that you know, you are the real deal, and it's not a fluke that you've won that title, and now it's just about continuing to prove that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a graphic here. Your next opponent, I believe your next challenger for the Ignition Championship is none other than BT Gunn. So another formidable opponent. And let's bring up the graphic. It's going to be June the 17th. So less than 2 months away. But that's going to be a phenomenal opponent. And I'd say a fantastic match for the people that are going to be in the venue that day. But I mean, it's no easy day at the office when you're the TNT Ignition champion. And I don't think you'd have it any other way, to be honest with you. But BT Gunn is going to be, I'd say, possibly your toughest opponent you've had so far for the championship.
And I mean, BT Gunn is one of the best wrestlers, without a doubt. Got a massive. It's a match that I'm very, very incredibly excited about, because again, gives me an opportunity to stand out and to put another real good name on a ledger. But this is kind of what I've said to Jay, and this is what I've said to the fans. You know, I'm not happy just to be the TNT Ignition champion. You know, that I'm very proud of it. What I aimed for when I got into TNT, I wanted to be when I go into any company, I want to be the champion, because that's how I think. I believe that I am the superior fighter anywhere I go. That's how I until someone proves me wrong. And so that's what I aimed for. I went to TNT and I aimed to become the man, and that's what I've done. But being the champion isn't just something I'm just happy about and like, oh, I'm so grateful that, you know, now the next aim is to become the best Ignition I've ever been.
Yeah.
And I won't until I do it, or someone proves me wrong. So again, this is we get down to. So the way that I am the best Ignition champion that there's ever been is by beating the best list opponents that any Ignition champion has ever faced, and that's what I'm aiming for. I've wrestled Sam Gradwell, I've had Shreddy, I've beaten him for the title. Incredible talent, you know, one of the best body guys in the world, I would say. Yeah. Looks absolutely phenomenal. He's a great wrestler and a great performer. And beating him meant a lot. It did, you know. Then I wrestled former WWE NXT UK star Sam Gradwell, who is known the world over. Again, phenomenal talent, incredible talent. But I've got the victory over him. And then I've just wrestled Chase Alexander, who again has been a TNT Ignition diehard from its inception. You know, everyone knows Chase is incredibly. If anything, he's criminally underrated because of how good he is. But I've come away with the victory in a very, very battle. But these opponents that TNT fans know, respect, and for me to beat them shows that of sort of trajectory that I'm not happy to just settle now. I'm not going to just be just another champion. I want to be the champion. I want to be the guy that everyone talks. And so that's what I'm going to try and do. And that's what I'm doing. And the next on that list is BT Gunn. And if I can beat him, I think it's looking good for me.
Absolutely. And I want to bring up a picture here. Let's talk about this guy here, Anthony Ogogo. Now, obviously, doing some good things with AEW. He's been over to the UK. He's wrestled for TNT. He's wrestled for Progress in the last 12 months. And you got a chance to step in the ring with him last June in a TNT Extreme ring. Like I say, Anthony Ogogo, we know his credentials: a former Olympian, a former Olympic boxer, bronze medalist, if I'm not mistaken, and yourself with your glowing career as a boxer, and getting the opportunity to face somebody like Anthony Ogogo, that must have been a bit of a thrill for you, considering what he's achieved in the boxing world, and then of course having a similar story to yourself, that crossover into pro wrestling. When did they first approach you about the possibility of facing Anthony Ogogo in the first instance?
Well, again, that was Jay. Again, this is why I'm so grateful. He's given me so many chances to stand out, and one of them. And I understood it. Just basic story makes sense. It makes sense. Very similar back in boxing and now in wrestling. And make no mistake, Anthony Ogogo was a more successful boxer than I was. You know, my chances, I didn't get the chances that Anthony Ogogo got, or achieved anywhere near what Anthony Ogogo got, because my chances got cut short a little bit too before I got the chance to maybe get to anywhere near that level. He went on to win Olympic gold medals, and this is truthful. I am a massive fan of Anthony. Absolute respect for him. What a fighter. What a boxer. And I was so proud as well when he won the medal. I just basically, as an Englishman, I was very proud.
Yeah.
But then he went over to pro wrestling. But he actually went over to pro wrestling after I had. So I'd already started by that point. And I was under this impression that I was the only boxer that had gone over to pro wrestling. The only ranked boxer who'd gone over to pro wrestling. And then I saw him go over. I think I saw possibly on Twitter he appeared like an independent show down south, I think, first, something like that. And I thought, he must be dipping his toe into it. And then before I knew it, he'd signed with AEW, and then, I mean, that's phenomenal for him.
Yeah,
that's one of the biggest companies in the world. And I kind of watched it with I kept my eye on him all the time, because as a fan of him as a boxer, I watched him, but also I wanted to see what he was doing, because I knew what I was doing and how I was trying to adapt my boxing style over to the world of pro wrestling. And I kind of kept my eye on him as well, just to see. He was on a much bigger stage to do it, just seeing what he was doing different or whatnot. But in my head, the opportunity when Anthony Ogogo announced he was coming over to TNT and he was going to do an open challenge, I Jay, and I said, Jay, I'd like to be that guy. I'd like to be that guy, because, and I mean this with respect, I believe I've adapted to pro wrestling as well, if not better, than anybody has in a long time. And that includes Anthony Ogogo, and that's why I wanted the challenge of it, because as good as he is, and he's bigger than me and whatnot, I really wanted to test what I can do against him. So I accepted the challenge. We had a really good match. I enjoyed it. He is an animal, no doubt. The man's an animal, and he's a big bad man.
Oh yeah, he's a beast.
But I had him rocking in that match, and there was an interference. Chase had come out halfway through the match when I had him just on the precipice, and it slightly put me off, and I walked onto an illegal shot from him when the referee wasn't looking. So as far as I'm concerned, that is still unfinished business. Still unfinished. I respect Anthony. He's elephant and an athlete and doing phenomenal. But if he ever comes back to TNT or any that includes Progress or whatnot, I think a remake.
Yeah, 100%, and I'll definitely be all for that. So I'm sure we haven't seen the last of Anthony Ogogo over here in the UK, so that's got to happen. It's got to happen. Now we've put it out into the universe, it's got to happen. But RPD, tell us a little bit about your wrestling fandom then, because as we've kind of touched upon, you come from a lineage of pro boxers. Your father, your grandfather, obviously you got the gym, which we'll talk about in a moment. But you grew up very much a wrestling fan, didn't you?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, yeah, but boxing in my family. My granddad boxed in the army. My dad was an amateur boxer. And it was just always in the family from the day I was born. But very, very early in my life, I remember I remember having them action figures with the arms that didn't move, just went up and down like that, and it was Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior and Undertaker and whatnot. And I started watching it, and I think when my first childhood memory of matches was probably Warrior and Hogan at Mania, and I just remember being absolutely enthralled by it because I still am a little bit of a superhero geek. I love the Marvel stuff and the DC stuff and everything. And this was like superheroes come to life for me when I watched it. That's what I always remember. So I had all the Spider-Man toys and Batman and whatnot. But then I saw Hogan and Warrior, who looked like two massive superheroes just going at it. And I thought, this is it. What's this? This is better than reading, comic books and whatnot. So I just became hooked from that day on. And I followed it and followed it and followed it. And then my teenage years, could be a bit younger than my teenage years, when I was about 8, 9, 10, it was the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin and the 316 era and the Vince McMahon feud and whatnot, and I was just enthralled. I watched that incessantly every Friday night, right through the Monday Night Wars. Friday night on Sky, I remember flicking over between TNT and Sky Sports to watch WCW and WWE at the same time. And just every some days, just always loved it, and it never left me either as I got older, and even as I progressed as a boxer, it was always my go-to, watch at night and stuff like that, and I'd watch the wrestling, and as I became a man, I'd have nights where we like the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. We'd get all the lads together. We'd order a pizza, get a few beers in, and watch the big pay-per-views, because that's been a part of my life literally since I've been 5. So yeah, just huge fan, and I'm so lucky that I got the chance to be a part of it, in later life.
Absolutely. And we've had a few people get in touch with us during the course of this live interview. And we've got Taj, who is the promoter of Tidal Championship Wrestling. And she sends us a question. Who is your favourite wrestler and your favourite action hero? So do you have a favourite wrestler of all time? Could be ones that you grew up watching. You mentioned Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior. Could be more recent times, or maybe somebody that you work with and an action hero, if you have one at all.
Yeah, first of all, hi Tash. I very much like great, lovely person. Wrestler. I've said it before. Stone Cold Steve Austin was mine by some distance. I mean, yeah, he literally my hero. Growing up, he was, and then even growing up into a man. I mean, that when he came back last year, was it last year when he wrestled against Kevin Owens?
Yes.
That was that. How long did he stop there for? Was it 10 years, 20 years? Something?
a while. It was easily 20 years, yeah.
Stone Cold Steve Austin returned since he left in 2002 or whatever it was. And that was the Mania moment for me. For him to come back to Texas was incredible. Big fan of The Rock and stuff and Taker and all that guys in that. But for me, it was always Steve. Absolutely adored him.
Yeah, and action hero, you mentioned about being a big Marvel and DC fan, but have you got a favourite comic book hero at all, RPD?
God, hard to say. I mean, obviously, I love all the classics. Love Spidey, love Batman, Superman, all of them. But like one of my favourite films, and I talk about it a bit too much on Twitter sometimes. But one of my favourite films is The Crow with Brandon Lee, and
Great film.
the connection to it because Sting kind of, 1991. But I love that film. It's got like a real sentimental thing. I've watched that film about 50, 60 times, something like that. But yeah, if I had to say one, The Crow is my favourite superhero.
Good answer. Good answer. And a curious question for me. I mean, obviously, growing up, you're a wrestling fan, but boxing is in the family. Boxing is in the blood. Your grandfather, your father. Was you encouraged to take up boxing as a youngster? And when did you first step in the ring to start your boxing training?
Ironically, no, I wasn't. I wasn't encouraged at all. Actually, my mum was completely against me boxing. Like completely. She's like. She's always wrapped me in cotton wool as well, just how she is, and she hated the idea of me boxing and getting hit for a living and stuff like that. And my dad never once pushed me into it. My granddad, my granddad was my best friend. He died when I was just turned 18. But he was my best friend, my granddad, and he used to watch wrestling with me as well. I used to stay at his house from the age of like 8 or something like that every Friday night, and we'd watch wrestling together. And he wasn't wrestling, but he watched it with me, and that always kind of makes it special to me anyway, But my granddad, my granddad always thought I was quite talented, but never pushed it. But my dad didn't want me. He knew what a brutal sport it can be and the dangers of it. But as I got older, I looked up to my dad and my granddad so much as this sort of like real macho male influences, and I saw him as brave and fighters and everything I wanted to be, and I never really felt I was. Although I boxed as a kid and stuff like that, I always felt a bit of a, I don't know. When I was first when I was young, I thought not that I was a coward, but I just didn't think I had in me what they had in them, and I just wished I did have that. And then as I got older, that became more of a thing of me wanting to prove to them and to me that I did have that. And then I entered myself into a boxing match, and they were like a bit against it. Maybe not a great idea. And I really, really trained, and I did it once, and I won, and I just got the bug. And then, ironically, I progressed and I progressed and progressed. And my dad always says it to me now, which is lovely for me to hear. But he always says, the ironic thing about you, Ryan, is you always wanted to prove that you were, as tough as we are, as tough as you think we are. Yeah. But you were tougher, and that was always nice. That was always nice because I went on to kind of achieve more than them within boxing, which makes me very. A lot of that's because of them. They helped me, train me, and got me ready.
Yeah. And you had 13 professional fights, I understand. You were won 12 of those, if I'm not mistaken. But you hung up the gloves in 2017. What you seem to have a lot of momentum, getting on a bit of a roll, getting a bit of buzz about yourself. But what were the circumstances that led you to maybe a slightly shocking retirement in 2017?
Yeah, so basically, what happened was. I'd been an unlicensed boxer for about 7 years or something, 6 years, something like that. And I'd had 10 unlicensed across the country, and I won. And I'd fought like ex-pros, ex-amateurs, really good lads, and I'd won the British title in the unlicensed scene twice at 2 different weights. So I won it at light middleweight and I won it at welterweight. And because I was doing so well within the unlicensed scene, I got approached by a couple of the promoters that ran that, I used to box at like nightclubs and stuff like that. It was quite rough back then. But they said, have you ever thought about turning professional? And so I turned. I thought about it. I thought, yeah, but listen, I'm on this roll and I've never been beat in this game, so let's see how I can do the next level up. So I turned professional, and like you say, I had 13 fights. I won my first three and I lost my fourth one. The loss I had, and I'm not making excuses. I got beat fair. Well, I got down to 10.5 stone for that night. I tried to get down to a weight. It was welterweight, but in the professional ranks, and near 10.5 stone for it, and it absolutely like gutted me. It gutted me. Like I had legs in the changing room before I went in. I had no punch resistance when I got in the ring. I just wasn't myself at all. I was severely dehydrated and whatnot. And as I say, the guy did beat me. That version of me that showed up that night, fair and square. So no excuses there. But I learned my lesson. I went up to light middleweight, even middleweight. So took stone ever. And I never lost. To be fair, I never really looked like losing a round again for the rest of my run. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So the next 9 fights on a roll. I won 9 on the bounce. I picked up the international masters championship as well in the pros while I was doing it. And as I don't think I lost a round from that point. So I was on this like massive roll, and I felt like I was gonna do something. I thought I was on the precipice. I think I'd just broke into the top 20 in the country, and so the big fights were there. But basically, I had an injury. I had a scare. I had a scare with one of my brain scans where I had to have MRI scans like that with boxing, and I changed my brain scan, which doesn't mean there's any damage or anything like that, but it's just something that obviously can happen within pro boxing, and it can happen from punches, and it can happen from nothing, by the way, as well. It mean nothing. But the problem I had is I could have carried on. This is what a lot of people don't understand. Like I wasn't forced to retire. I could have carried on. But I was 2 or 3 weeks away from my daughter being born, and I got a little bit of pressure from my partner and my mother, and my father, who was my boxing cornerman, and they weren't sure that was the right. If this wasn't a little bit of a warning sign to get out now before or something maybe severe, and so. The truth is, we never know what I could have gone another 50 fights and been absolutely fine, and maybe won big titles and stuff like that, and I may not have. Who knows? But I decided to step away because of my daughter at the time, and that was it. And I was absolutely devastated because I'd given so much to my life to professional boxing, and I felt like it had kind of been cheated from me a little bit because I was 100% healthy. There was nothing wrong with me or anything like that. And I just felt like I'd been kind of forced out. And that's when like all hope was lost, I got a phone call, and that was Johnny Brannigan. This was like a year later. And I'd got a bit of weight on and everything, because I just kind of give up on living like an athlete anymore, because I felt like I'd give so much time and very little back. But that was me being bitter. I wasn't right really much in my kind of thought process there. And anyway, he rang me up and he said, "Ryan, I know you've always been a big fan of pro wrestling. Would you ever be interested in having a go at it?" And like the light bulb went off in my head, and I thought I'd love to have a go at a pro wrestling match. And so I got trained with Johnny and Sam and whatnot, and we prepared. And I genuinely did think it was going to be like a one match thing, like take it off the bucket list. Got to say, but I absolutely fell in love. I was already in love with it anyway, but as a performer, gave me all the things I thought I'd never feel again. The buzz of the live crowd, sort of the competition, the athleticism, all that sort of stuff. It gave me all them things and more, and that was it. I've never looked back since.
Yeah, and I'm sure it gave you that. It filled that void, didn't it? That desire, that hunger, that competitive streak within you, and it was filled with professional wrestling. And do you miss being a boxer? Do you miss kind of the competitive nature of being a boxer in the ring, or has wrestling completely filled that void for you that you no longer kind of have them desires to lace up the gloves anymore?
Again, that's really hard. And what I mean by that is pro wrestling has been an absolute godsend. I love it. I love it. And what I will say is, if I had been carried on boxing, then I'd have never got this chance, which I would have been so disappointed not to have been able to do this. You know, so in a way, I am a big believer in fate and things like that. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, like I'm meant to happen. At the time when I got pulled away from boxing, I couldn't understand it. I honestly couldn't. I couldn't get my head around why it hadn't worked out with the effort I'd put in and the ability that I believed I had. I couldn't understand why I'd not become what I thought I was meant to become. But now I believe that it was for this. Genuinely, I'm not highly spiritual, but I do believe that things happen for a reason, and I just think that I was always meant to find my way to pro wrestling, and I am so glad that I did. But if I do miss boxing. I do miss boxing because that again, I just like having a fight. I like having a fight, but pro wrestling has given me that and more, and I will always be eternally grateful to pro wrestling, but I'll be eternally grateful to pro wrestling fans. That's why I try so hard because of them. They have given me a second chance and I'll fight to the end for them now. I'll fight to the end.
Fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about this guy here and William Regal. Like I'm a huge fan of William Regal, somebody that you've got to know very well over the years. But how did your friendship or professional relationship start with Mr. Regal? Because I know that he has kind of weaved his way into your career and been a big inspiration of yours, hasn't he?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I've talked to him about this as well, and it's a funny story. But obviously, growing up as a kid, watching the Attitude Era and whatnot, I always was a massive fan of William Regal, big heel character at the time and whatnot. But the reason I was drawn to William Regal was because obviously he was announced that he was from Blackpool.
Yes.
That's my hometown, so I was absolutely blown away that there was someone from my hometown being represented on Raw and stuff like that. So that's where my fandom of him came from. And then life just went on, and I became a boxer, and I was fighting all over. But one night I boxed at the Winter Gardens in Blackpool, and it was a big home local show. And with quite a few local fighters on it, and I boxed at the Winter Gardens, and I won at the Winter Gardens. And when I was there, a friend of mine called Bobby Ball, who bless his soul, passed away last year. He was a big comedian in Blackpool, and he come to watch me box, and he told me that the next night at the Winter Gardens, NXT were going to be there. And he knew I was a wrestling fan. And the reason he knew I was a wrestling fan is because when I was boxing, I always used to come down to different wrestlers' entrance fee. So that was like odd to it, But anyway, he said, would you like to go to this NXT? And I said, I'd love to go. So he said, I'm friends with William Regal. And I was like, you're joking me. I'm friends with William Regal. I can maybe get you some passes and you go backstage. Like, God, that's unbelievable. So anyway, me and my friends went. There's about 10 of us. There's pictures again on my Instagram and stuff like that. About 10 of us went, and we went backstage. So straight away we were put in catering, and they fed us and everything like that. And you know, we had like Finn Balor going past us and Sami Zayn and all that, and Baron Corbin and back in the NXT days. And then William Regal came out and he sat with us, for about half an hour and just had a chat and talked to us and everything like that. And he was an absolute gentleman, and he was so nice, and he knew that I was his friend. He knew that I was Bobby's friend and that I'd boxed the night before, and he talked a little bit about that. And that was that. We then finished the conversation. We went out, watched the show, went home, and that was the end of that. And I never thought I'd see him again. And I just thought, you know, what a great thing to meet, like a hero going up. And then I got into pro wrestling. Then so that was when I was boxing. Then I think a year or two passed, and I ended up retiring. And then I went into pro wrestling with Johnny Brannigan and GPW. And ironically, one of my old trainers, someone who I was training with, rang me up one day. Said, Ryan, NXT UK are coming to the Winter Garden. So I said, all right, yeah, great. He went, I'm good friends with William Regal. This is a few years later. And I said, God, that's unbelievable. I said, really? And he went, yeah. He said, would you like him to come to your gym? And I said, I'd like him to come to my gym. Yeah, 100%. He said, you know, we'll get the local paper down and we'll take a picture and you can kind of meet him and whatever. I said, yeah, fantastic. So anyway, I show up at the gym. Alan Levine, who is our mutual friend, great friend of mine, and of William, and he comes down, and sure enough, William Regal shows up at my gym, and he comes in, and the local newspaper reporter shows up, and can I take a few pictures of you in Davies boxing gym, and they take these pictures and whatnot. And while we're doing it, he says to me, I believe you're doing a bit of wrestling. Now, I didn't really know he even remembered me at this point from when he'd met me with, you know, back at the NXT. And I believe you're doing a bit of wrestling now. And I said, yeah, I've just started. I think I had 2 matches in total to this point. He says, right, okay, let's see what you can do then. And I just feel like, so
no pressure.
People in the gym, I thought, oh my God. Anyway, come on. And he just rolled his sleeves up. He just jumped in my ring, in a boxing ring. I thought, oh my God. So I got in the ring and he says, right, let's lock up. Next thing we're locking up. And he got me in headlocks and stuff. And I'm thinking, what do I do? Like, do I go for it with it? Do I go for it? You know, like what you know, will he respect me for going for him? Will he think I'm taking the piss by going for him? But the great thing was he spent about an hour, genuinely an hour. And there's footage, again, I've got footage of that, but he did different holds. He showed me reversals. He showed me sort of psychology. He was everything for about an hour. He spent so much time. And I was blown away. And he was so nice. That was the only thing I can say. Like, he was such a gentleman. And for him to bother to start with it, because in effect I was a trainee at the time, to even, you know, spend that time with me and really try and help me, I've always appreciated it. And then from that day on, he told me that day, if you ever need anything, just message me, and you know, I'll always send you my opinions on your matches and your critique matches, and you know, any advice I can give you and whatnot. And so I have, and we've become, you know, I consider him a very good friend now. I speak to him quite regularly. See, again, which is so weird because he was just this guy I watched on TV when I was a kid, and now I you know, although he is still that thing, he's genuinely my friend now. You know, he is my friend, and who I talk to about a lot of other things rather than wrestling as well. So yeah, just one of those real weird coincidences in life that I'm very grateful for. And this
Absolutely. Yeah. What does he think of your recent successes? I mean, like I say, obviously you've recently become the Odyssey Pro champion. I don't know if he knows too much, or whether you've conversed about that, but obviously your rise on the UK scene, your rise with companies like Odyssey and TNT can't have gone unnoticed to Mr. Regal.
No, he's a busy man. He's a busy man. He's got a lot of stuff on, but he still found time last week to message me, say, congratulations on all the success. And he said, remember to always enjoy this. And that's what I try and do. That's what I try.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about your gym, Davies, I believe it's called. And do you run it, or are you a coach there, or is it still within the family? Tell us a bit about the boxing gym.
I own it alongside my dad. It's a 50-50 partnership. We run boxing classes for anywhere ranging from 5-year-old right up to I think my oldest client's 77. So yeah, we've got quite a variety. But we kind of pride ourselves on being like a boxing gym for everybody, because I believe boxing can be for everybody. You don't have to be competing and be this sort of vicious fighter. You know, it can be just used to lose weight. It can be used for confidence boosting. It can be used for young kids who are getting bullied and whatnot, and a little bit of self-defense is never going to do them any harm. And yeah, it's just a place I'm incredibly proud of, really. You know, me and my dad have started that from nothing, and it's really blossomed, and it's very, very busy now. And my sister now works with me there, and she does like MetaFit classes for ladies and stuff like that. It's just something that, you know, I'm very lucky to be able to say I do as a job. You know, I don't really go to work. I go and teach, you know, my other passion to people as a job and get paid for it. So yeah, again, something I'm very proud of, and long may it continue.
Absolutely, absolutely. And kind of before we kind of wrap up this this fantastic interview and this episode of Wrestling with Johners, like say you've been in the wrestling business for about 4 years. Let's say maybe it would take a year and a half off for the pandemic, but you must have other favourite moments, other highlights, other things that you're very, very proud of that you've achieved so far in your wrestling career. Other companies you've worked for as well. But enlighten us on some of your other highlights and favourite memories from the last 4 years.
God, I mean, there's so many. I mean, obviously, titles are incredibly important for me, because that is part of legacy, isn't it? You know, when this is done for me, I'll be able to say I was the TNT champion. I can be able to say I was the Odyssey Pro Wrestling champion. And I hope to add to that list as well, while you know, before I'm done. So we carry on. But I mean, as I say, in terms of big moments, I've been really lucky to kind of experience a lot of the things that I got to see as a kid, match types and whatnot. So I've had lumberjack matches, I've had boxing matches, I've had I've had street fights, I've had TLC matches, I've won 2 Royal Rumbles, you know, which again is, you know, huge moments for me in different companies. But I always try and pick companies when I can that kind of speak to me as well. And what I mean by that is I primarily work for family orientated wrestling shows, because that. And the reason I do that is because that kind of what wrestling is to me, and that doesn't mean that it is the definitive thing. It's just this is what it's to me. I grew up as a child watching wrestling, and so I remember how much I held for these men and women. Of you know, I thought they were just the superheroes, you know, and so I always try and perform, you know, in wrestling shows, because I think it's important to try and be something like that for kids watching wrestling. I think that's what it can be, and that's when it transcends just something like you're having a wrestling match. It can be so much more than that. And the companies I work for, like Odyssey, like TNT, like Grand Pro, like Future Shock, like the Kingdom, like Knockout. Trying to think. I can't forget anybody.
That's a good list already.
Like Vessel Island again. Yeah. These are massive companies, and now one of the more newest ones on the scene, Soft Pro, again, doing amazing things. I try and wrestle for these companies that you know are for all ages as well, because that's what I want it to be. And the kids get a great thing out of it. The parents and the adults, you know, they get something out of it as well, because that's what wrestling can be. It's for everybody. I think it's for everybody anyway, you know. And so, yeah, I'm incredibly proud of the companies I work for, and nearly all of them, if not all of them, I think it is all of them. They all do other things as well. That's kind of, they do things that transcend matches. So what I mean by that is Wrestle Ireland example, but they all do it. They give to worthy causes. They do money for food banks and stuff like that, and they raise money, and they do it for things and for the local community in Birkenhead.
Yeah,
they really make an effort to make what is in effect a wrestling show something that can be much bigger than that and benefit, you know, poor people and hungry people and all that sort of stuff, and that matters. That sort of stuff is what matters, especially as I'm getting older. That's the sort of stuff I want to be involved in, things that you can help people with, and you can do it while entertaining them, which is even better. You know, I said to you before, Odyssey, when they helped that family, you know, that meant something to me. And that's what I'm going to strive to do in every company. I know TNT are forever raising money for different causes, and they've just done that for that little girl, which was so nice. But it goes on, and there isn't a company that I work for that haven't or don't try to do things to help communities, and that matters to me. So yeah, absolutely love being a pro wrestler. I adore being a pro wrestler. It's a massive, but also for however long this little wave lasts, I want to try and do as much with it away from wrestling as well, that will benefit people as I can.
Absolutely. And I'm going to leave the final question to one of our viewers, and he sent a question through via YouTube earlier on, and it's a friend of the show, Richie. What dream opponents do you have in 2023? So he's asked for 3 there, but are there any in particular that you have on the horizon, or any that you'd like to face that you haven't done so already, that you think would be a good match for yourself, or an interesting combination, an interesting match between you and a dream opponent?
Right, that's really tough, because there's so many people I'd like to.
Yeah.
God, who would I like to wrestle?
Now, Rich has really put you on the spot here. So, hardest question of the day.
I mean, one of the guys who I've become good friends with within pro wrestling, but I just love as a character, and I love what he does. Is JJ Webb.
Yeah.
He's actually just been announced today. Strangely, before I came on here, he's going to be wrestling for Progress in his debut. So well done, JJ Webb. But yeah, I think me and him could tell a good story. I think there's a story to be told there with his character and mine. I think that's a match that could, would definitely put bums on seats. Who else would I like to wrestle? That is putting on me on the spot, because I'll miss so many of them. I know I've wrestled a lot of, like I'd like to wrestle other guys who I've already wrestled so many times. Like I've wrestled Joey Owen, Joey Hayes, and I've wrestled Lance Rivera, who I absolutely love wrestling. I love wrestling them too. I love wrestling Rick Marcus, and it goes on and on and on. If I have to be put on the spot, rather than give you another 2, I'll just say, if Steve Austin wants to come back at time one more time, there is my dream match. There you go.
There we go. And I think that definitely answers Rich's question, but that's absolutely fantastic. But before we ask you for your socials, and before we sign off this fantastic episode of Wrestling with Jonas, I just need to quickly highlight who my guests are for the month of May. Now, I did reveal this in my interview with Niwa a couple of days ago, but I think it deserves another quick mention, because we've got a loaded schedule for the month of May. And let me just remove Rich's question there. And the first one next week is going to be a super crazy week for me. I've got 3 live interviews next week, starting on Monday the 1st of May at 8 p.m. live. I've got Farm Strong Toby Valentine, say a young tough, big wrestler that's doing some good things in the south and the southwest of the UK. I've seen him wrestle recently for Southwest Wrestling in Tewkesbury, but a young guy that's making waves in the south and the southwest of the UK. I can't wait to speak to Toby Valentine next Monday, the 1st of May, 8 p.m. And then Wednesday, the 3rd, I've got the freshest, the flyest, the finest Harrison Leon doing some great things over in UBW in Bedfordshire, Sacrifice Pro. And I think he's recently appeared in Roy Johnson's latest Everything Pattern show from a couple of weeks ago. So that's going to be a pleasure to speak to Harrison Leon on Wednesday the 3rd, next Wednesday, 8 o'clock. And then I said that next week's going to be a packed week. The third live interview of the week is going to be next Friday when I speak to the promoter of Immortal Wrestling in my neck of the woods, Westbury in Wiltshire, ahead of their next live show on Saturday, the 27th of May from the Venom nightclub. And Jay White, not that Jay White, but promoter Jay White will be on the show talking all about the next show and hyping up Immortal Combat from the Venom nightclub in Westbury, the 27th of May. And then on the 10th of May, I've got the Prince of Pace, Callum Newman, coming onto the show. I've been wanting to get this guy on the show for a little while now, and it's finally happening in the run-up to Super Strong Style later on in May. But Callum Newman, he's had some fantastic outings in 2023, and I've seen him many, many times for progress in the last 12 months. But the Prince of Pace, Callum Newman, will be on the show on, I think it's Wednesday, the 10th of May. So a lot of things going on within the first couple of weeks. And then we celebrate episode 300. I mentioned this earlier on, but Monday, the 15th of May, I will have none other than Nina Samuels coming onto this show for episode 300. She's going to be gracing us with her presence. That's going to be a fantastic milestone episode with Nina Samuels, an amazing guest for an amazing episode, a landmark episode as well. But some pretty stacked guests there, RPD, and I'm sure one or two of them you may or may not be familiar with.
I know Toby well. I know Toby. Toby just debuted last couple of shows for us as well. And he's incredible talent.
Yeah, top guy for sure. Bright future.
Very. I expect big things from Toby.
Yeah, absolutely. So RPD, as we kind of bring this episode of Wrestling with Johners to a close, an opportunity now for you to tell us where my listeners, where my friends, fans, followers can reach out to you, learn a bit more about RPD, where they can reach out and say hi, maybe see some of your footage or just follow you on social media. And if it helps, if I can find it, I've got your socials running along the bottom of the screen there for Instagram and Twitter, but the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'd love you to follow the journey. The journey isn't done yet. We've still got things to do. So if you can follow me on Twitter, RPD Fighter, or Instagram, RP Davis. Yeah, I'd love you to follow what I'm doing and what I'm up to. In terms of the companies I work for, so I get it right. Let me go through.
Yeah.
So you want to follow Soft Pro. If you want to follow Future Shock, if you want to follow Grand Pro Wrestling, if you want to follow Wrestle Island, if you want to follow the Kingdom of Wrestling, if you want to follow Knockout Wrestling, and if you want to follow TNT Wrestling or Odyssey Pro Wrestling. There we go. Got them all. I've got them all. Got them all.
Indeed. Here we go. But a great collection of companies that you've worked for and doing some great things. But any final words from RPD? And like I say, you've had a great journey in boxing, a great journey in pro wrestling, and it feels like it's only just got started.
Yeah. That's exactly how I feel. I touched upon it before, but the things I've done as a boxer is me. It's part of me. It will always be part of me. I'm very, very proud of it. But I do feel like fate has brought me to this, which is like a childhood dream come true. So it's now about finishing. Sorry to pardon the pun, but finishing the story properly and finishing it on my terms as well. You know, I never got to finish boxing on the terms I wanted. It kind of got snatched away, and now I realise why. And this is my opportunity to put my final exclamation mark on my sort of athletic career. And I look forward to doing it.
Absolutely. And I'm going to flash up this picture one more time. Look at that. Look at that. It doesn't get much better than the TNT Ignition champion and the Odyssey Pro heavyweight champion. But RPD, it's been a pleasure speaking to you for an hour and a half now. It's been an absolute honor and a privilege to speak to you and for being a fantastic guest. But RP Davies, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll see you at the shows, my friend.
Thank you very much, mate. Thank you.